Hi, folks. Hope you are doing well. I'm your instructor, Rajesh Durbala, and welcome to Rajesh Durbala Tutorials. In this session, we are going to discuss the basic concept of rural marketing. Fine. So let's see what's in agenda and what's in store, what's our learning outcomes for this session. So what we are going to understand through this session is we would like to understand the growth and significance of rural markets in India, how they are growing, what is propelling this growth, and what's the significance, how important is rural markets in India. And then we would also like to understand the rural consumer, and then we will take a look into the marketing mix in the rural markets. Fine, let's go ahead and see what's the importance of rural markets. Now we can see that the urban market is becoming saturated. A lot of companies, a lot of products, they are just pushing the urban consumer, and the level of competition is increasing. So companies, brands are moving towards, or they are vying for their pie in the rural markets. So one very important factor why rural markets have become important is the increasing competition in the urban markets. Coming to the next one, the socio-economic changes in rural markets or rural India. The social structure is changing. Okay, the economic conditions are changing. A lot of things. Now, right now, you can see what the government of India claims to be like rural electrification has happened. Okay, and at the same time, you could see that the Ujjwala Yojana by the government. So all these things are bringing up a lot of social changes in the rural areas. People now have become aspirational in rural markets. They now, like, if I club it with the next point, that is information technology reaches the rural India. Now they have access to internets, they have the access to digital satellite televisions. Now when they have access to all these such things, so what is happening is people are just now able to see what's happening in the world. So there is some change happening. Same way you could see the rural people, they are sending their children to nearby cities for higher education. So we are developing, or we are generating the first generation learners in many such villages. Now with this, their horizons are broadening. They are able to see the world, they are able to learn new things about the world, and this is bringing in some kind of a socio-economic change within the rural setup. Fine. The same way, if I see the income generation through self-help groups, in the recent past, a lot of self-help groups, a lot of NGOs, a lot of cooperative societies have come up in the rural areas. They are providing finance facilities, they are providing, farm loans, and at the same time imparting the technical know-how to people. In such way, what is happening is the villagers are getting empowered, and at the same time their levels of income are increasing. And definitely government is also doing a lot. They want the income of the farmers to double. So all these things which are happening is creating some new generation of income for them. Moreover, in many states you must have observed that the government is also encouraging people to move away from the routine crops like paddy and wheat. They are encouraging people to go into floriculture, the horticulture, and all those things, and they are generating more income. So this way, a lot of self-help groups, with the help of the government, with the help of NGOs and all, a lot of income generation has been happening, and that is propelling a lot of change in the rural markets. Now people, when they have more income, disposable income with them, probably it creates new markets for companies and their products. And then access is more important than ownership, right? In the rural markets, again, if we assume that the rural markets are more dependent on agriculture, in such a scenario, it's not necessary for the rural people to own a lot of things. Even if we provide them access, that can also be quite handy. Now for instance, let us say farmers may require a lot of capital investment in the form of pump sets, okay, or tractors and other equipment, which requires a lot of capital investment. But if we create a model where they could just rent or lease these equipment during the sowing season or the harvesting season, so the capital of the farmers don't get blocked. So here what is happening, farmers are getting the access and not necessarily they need to own it, right? So this is how the importance of rural market is taking shape, and definitely it's creating a new market altogether. And going ahead, there are some myths about the rural market. Okay, the moment we think of the rural, okay, the village setup and all, we have a lot of myths in our minds. But as a marketeer, you need to, demystify all these things. You need to be thinking away from these myths. Now, the busting of these myths are very, very important for the marketeers. Number one, all villages are equally populated. Not necessarily. There are a lot of villages where the density of population is quite low. There could be only a few families in those villages. And there could be some villages which are teeming with people. So it's important that we need to understand that the density of population is not equally distributed in all the villages. At the same time, we also need to understand that the rural consumers are not homogeneous. We are under the perception that they are homogeneous. They behave the same way, they eat the same way, they live the same way. Not at all. If we try to compare the rural customers across the India, now for instance, let us say, if you just go to the rural consumers in Kerala, you would see that you will find a lot of English speaking population. Okay, the farmers in Kerala could be educated and at the same time they could be English speaking as well. But that's not the case when I go to Bihar or UP or any other place. So the point is, the rural consumers are not homogeneous also. There are totally a large amount of diversity. A lot of diversity exists and prevails, and we have to appreciate that diversity. It is also said that the dialect keeps changing every 30 or 35 kilometers if we travel in India. So the way people speak, that also keeps changing. So it's a very complex thing. It's not at all a homogeneous thing. And at the same time, the rural consumers, they are illiterate and they don't differentiate or discriminate between products or brands. Again, probably this could have been true a few years ago, but today the rural people have also become brand conscious. Probably they may not be using the same brands that we use as an urban consumer, but they have their own brands. For instance, let us say, we may be using Surf Excel or Surf Ultramatic as our preferred detergents, or maybe Ariel, or maybe Tide. But for the rural consumer, they do use brands. It's not that give anything, they will take it, but they also have their own brands like Nirma or Wheel or Ghadi detergent. Okay, so they have their own preference for brands. Like let us say if they want to buy a soap, they would prefer to buy a Lifebuoy or a Lux. They want brands. It's not that give anything, they would take it. Okay, so even though they are illiterate, but they have become brand conscious. If we talk about cosmetics and all, probably the girls or women in India, probably the urban segment, they may be using maybe Glow and Lovely, or maybe let us say Olay or Lakme or Garnier or L'Oreal. And probably the same brands may not be used in the rural market, but they have their own brands that they prefer. Probably like Vicco Turmeric is one very popular brand in the rural areas, right? So thinking that they are illiterate and they would take anything and they are not brand conscious, again, could be a wrong notion. And the next important thing that we need to understand is only low price products will sell in rural India. Not at all. Okay. The rural consumer is value conscious, not price conscious. We have to understand this. They are value conscious, not price conscious. Because if we try to understand the setup, majority of the rural people, they live in small houses. They don't have much space. At the same time, they may not be. For instance, let us say in our urban houses, we may be using, multiple soap for multiple purposes. Like I may be using a soap for bathing. I may be using a soap for just washing hands. Okay, so I may be using multiple soaps. At the same time, different family members may also have different soaps, right? I may be using a soap. My wife may be using a different soap. So this is what an urban setup is. But in the rural, probably they'll be using the same soap for the entire family. Okay, and probably they will be using the same soap for all the different uses, for bathing, for washing, anything. Okay, so for them, they're not worried about the price. Means obviously they'll consider the price, but what they're more interested is the value. I buy a single soap, and if the same single soap can serve all different purposes, that is what they prefer. Like for instance, Lifebuoy is a very popular soap in the rural markets, and the reason why it is popular probably could be, you must have, I don't know whether you know it or not, they use the Lifebuoy for bathing, they use the Lifebuoy as a shampoo, they use Lifebuoy even for washing clothes. So they find the Lifebuoy as a brand, it is a lot of value that they get out of it. Okay, so it's not the price that they are conscious about, it's the value they are looking for. Likewise, you must have seen Nokia 1100 became a very popular phone, and it probably was one of the largest selling phones in the Indian market. The reason, we had a lot of cheaper phones also at that time, but Nokia 1100, even if it was priced around 1500 rupees, it sold a lot compared to cheaper counterparts. The reason was the rural market propelled its sale because they found a lot of value in that. Value in the sense it had music, okay, and most interestingly, they just incorporated a torch. And in the rural market where electrification is not that good, okay, roads are not that good, you don't have street lights, people have a tendency to carry a torch or a lamp. And when they integrated that torch within the phone, it became a very handy thing. And then you have this electricity problem, persistent electricity problem in the rural market. And this phone could go up till 5 or 6 days on a single charge. So again, what they found is in this phone, there was value. They appreciated these features and they found value in that. So even if the price of this product was reasonably or comparatively higher than some of the other counterparts like Samsung Guru or something, they preferred this phone. So the point is, it's not the price that matters, it's the value that matters. Okay. And then rural markets are not the consumer durables market. This is also a myth. Rural markets, people have taken up to all the durables. Now they have televisions, they have radios, they have probably not washing machines. Okay. They may have, they are buying refrigerators. So all these things, so rural market is opening up to all these things. People are becoming aspirational and they require these things. Okay. So these are some of the myths about the rural markets. Then let us look at the rural consumer. Okay. When we analyze or study the rural consumer, okay, we need to get the education profile also. Again, as we discussed earlier, the people may not be that highly educated, but now the interest towards, or the people have started recognizing the need or importance of education. And moreover, people in the rural areas are, even if they are going for higher studies, there is an orientation that they would be studying some courses which are relevant for their socio-economic conditions. Okay, like skill development courses. Recently, when the government has launched the skill enhancement and all, so at that time, the people took up a lot of skill development courses like TV repairing or any air conditioning repairing. So there are a lot of diploma courses which people are getting into. So the education profiles of the rural consumers are increasing. And the same way, we would see that the low income levels, right? So people have low income levels, and at the same time, if you see, the income of the people is not distributed homogeneously throughout the year. If we say that rural economy is more agriculture oriented, so what happens is in few months of the year, they have good income, but on the other side of the year, they may have less income. So the point is the distribution of income is also not uniform. And the occupations, okay. So the rural consumers, they have different kind of occupations. They could be carpenters, they could be farmers, they could be, they could be working as some laborers, okay, farm laborers, or maybe just laborers, pottery, carpentry, all these. So these are the various occupations. So we need to keep these occupations in mind when we are trying to market our products for the rural consumer. So it's not that they are the white collar jobs. Uh, Majority of them in the rural market, they are into the blue collar jobs, right? So that's their occupations. Then for them, the reference groups, okay, for them, ideally the reference groups is the village heads or the sarpanch, okay, or maybe some families, okay, who are well to do, who are a bit educated. So these people, they take them as their reference group. They try to imitate them, they want to become like them, okay. So we have to understand who are the reference groups these people idolize. And then media habit, the most important media habit is the talk of the town, the word of mouth. They, mostly they have that village, you can say that they have something in Hindi what we call a chabutra. They're a huge tree, they sit around the tree in the afternoon after their lunch. They keep discussing all the happenings that are happening. This person bought this, that. So that's just a, that's an informal communication which they ideally rely on. But again, nowadays, if you see, after the access of internet, people are again relying a lot on WhatsApp and other forwards on social media. They are considering that as the news. Okay, very few people, they actually read the formal media. Okay, they access the formal media. And at the same time, for them, the rural people, radio is another important way of getting the news, right? That's another important media habit. And the kind of television channels they watch, right? That also makes a very important analysis. What should be my communication strategy, right? And then the brand conscious customer. Again, we have to understand the rural consumers are becoming brand conscious. They need their brands. Okay. For them, a lot of brands are vying for them, targeting them. For instance, let us see Hero Honda Splendor. It becomes the world's largest selling motorcycle, and the entire sale was propelled by the rural consumers. They find it a reliable, economical, value driven motorcycle, so they prefer buying that. And the same way, Honda Shine gives you more value proposition in the same segment, and they offered alloy wheels. And Honda Shine also does a great business in the rural market. So people are brand conscious, right? They are buying that Hero Motorcorps, the Splendor, and they are buying the Shine from Honda. So people are becoming brand conscious. And as I told you earlier, they look for value for money. For them, that value is very important. See, I may drink a Coke, I may not be, I just spend 40 rupees and get a 750 ml bottle and I just consume it. And for me, it's just a way of quenching my thirst or satisfying myself. Or I could just consume it as a, time pass or pastime, right? But for a rural consumer, when he does that, the kind of satisfaction, when he consumes a Coke, the kind of satisfaction that he derives, okay, after every sip, he just looks at the bottle, appreciates the drink, the design of the bottle, the color of the bottle. So for him, that 40 rupees is of great value. So a rural consumer looks for value for money. That's very, very important. They are not price driven consumers, they are value driven consumers. Always keep this thing in mind. Likewise, the marketing mix for the rural markets almost is the same. You have the same kind of things: product, price, place, and promotion, the usual marketing mix. The only thing is, when you are taking the product decisions, okay, you need to innovate your products to suit the rural needs. You cannot just launch the same product as that in the urban markets into the rural markets. For instance, let us say I cannot launch a front loading washing machine into a rural market, right? Reason being, most of the houses in rural India may not have tapped water connection, right? So a front loading washing machine may not be ideal, but if a top loading washing machine, okay, they can easily put water into the washing machine using their bucket. So this kind of product adaptation is required. you may see that, the ROUV, the electrical water filters or water purifiers may not be an ideal thing for the rural market. What you have to look for is the gravity based water purifiers like Tata Swachh, okay, AquaGuards, Aqua Pure, all those things where it's a gravity water purifiers which run without electricity and water can be just poured into it. So these kind of product adaptations are required. Then pricing decisions. Again, we need to focus on our pricing decision also, because the rural consumer, they do not buy in bulk, they buy in small quantities, okay, and more importantly they would like to spend, you know uh, if I price the product in such a way that it can be purchased in one currency note or in one coin, that becomes very convenient way, that catches up the sales in rural market. Like they can just place a 5 rupee coin on the counter and buy a product. Okay, rather than 6 rupees, 5 rupee would be a better idea. Or rather than 4 rupees, also I would say 5 rupee would be a better idea. Okay, so when you are pricing the products for rural markets, you need to understand that how they deal with the currency, how much of currency they have. Okay, who comes to buy? Many a times, like some ingredients are over at home, the mother can send their children to the nearby grocery store or something, the nearby provision store, just by giving a coin or a single note, and they can send them to the shop. Okay, so that way it becomes very convenient for the rural customer if the pricing is done where the product could be bought within one currency note or in one coin. Okay, so pricing products like 5 rupee or 10 rupee or 20 rupee, that way things would be much convenient rather than having a 22 rupees or 25 rupees or something. Okay, then another thing, as I told you, like they buy in smaller quantities. Okay, so the same way, like the product decision and the pricing decision can be worked together, and launching of small packets, sachets, okay, smaller SKUs. You can see that Apifizz or Bfizz, all those products, they have launched the 10 rupee SKUs, 160 ml 10 rupee SKUs, and they are very, very popular in the rural markets, right? You just give a 10 rupee note and you buy that, and they are selling like hotcakes. Then promotion decisions. Okay, the promotions, the way you promote, the way you communicate in the rural markets is entirely different. It cannot be the same way as you do it in the urban markets. Because the media choices of the people are also quite different, right? So, for instance, you can put up some stalls or kiosks or road shows in any mandis. Okay, you have a lot of mandis in the rural markets, some heart, which we say, okay, village fairs you have. So you can put up some stalls, do some road plays. Okay, you can have some kiosks, demonstrations, posters, wall paintings. These are the ways of promotions and communications in rural markets. Wheel did a great job running a missed call campaign, if you remember, okay, where people could give a missed call to a number, and at the same time, they would receive a lot of, humorous conversations or jokes onto their phone. And the rural market just enjoyed that. So this way, you need to come up with some innovative ideas to promote your products into the rural markets. Again, distribution. You need to think of very innovative ways of reaching out to the rural markets. That's another very, very important thing. Now you could see ITC has got a robust distribution network even within the rural areas, because the cigarettes, they're available across the country wherever you go. Okay, ITC has its supremacy, and it is leveraging the same distribution network for selling its other FMCG products, right? Same way, if you see, HUL tried out a very innovative distribution system using Shakti Ammas. Okay, in villages in Andhra Pradesh, they trained some females from villages where they became the distributors of HUL products. This way, they found a new distribution channels into the rural market, and at the same time, they work towards empowering the rural women. Okay, that's again a very great initiative. And then you have your relationship management. You need to keep a connect. You need to maintain the relationships with the rural consumer as well. It's not just important for the urban consumer. You need to also build relations with the rural consumers. Okay. At the same time, like you could see the Kisan credit cards, they are one such initiative where financial institutions are building the relationships with the consumers in the rural markets, right? So this is the marketing mix. I hope you liked this session. If you have found it useful, do like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Spread the good word. Thank you. Bye bye. Have a nice day.